Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Overflow Podcast, where we're all about living in the overflow of God's presence and power in our everyday lives. I'm Eli Austin, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Pastor Wayne Sutton. This past Sunday felt like a moment where a lot of people were carrying things, and for once it wasn't hidden. You could sense that people are walking through real situations right now, some heavy, some complicated, and some just hard to explain. And instead of trying to clean that up and move past it quickly, the message sort of leaned in. We talked about what it means to stay steady when life feels uncertain. We talked about commitment, about what church is really supposed to be, and about how easy it is to quietly carry things on your own without letting anyone in. But the part that really stuck with me was the part from the scripture with the man with the withered hand. He had a choice in that moment. He could show what looked normal, or he could expose what was broken. And that healing came when he chose to be honest. And that's really where we're going to go today. So, Wayne, let's jump in. My biggest thing when I look at this is, what if the thing that's holding you back isn't your struggle, but the fact that you're trying to cover it up, or we're trying to hide it?
The withered hand, what a great example. And we talk about this, we talked about a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
Being intentional about, just being real. And I think today, more than ever, we need that from the body of believers.
Amen.
So I met with some of the men from church last night, and we would sit down, and it became less about the word and more about what we were all kind of going through. And it was so good. And that's it. So knowing your labor, I love this out of the verse, knowing your labor is not in vain. The word there that hit me was labor. That's work, unless it's Labor Day and you get it off. Labor is work, and that's okay. Work's not always a four-letter word. It's a four-letter word, but it's not always bad. But really, that's what kind of hit me through the sermon Sunday, and even going through this week with, work challenges and other challenges. It's like, okay, you know what? I need to be steadfast. I need to be immovable, because the flesh is movable. It's really easy for us to follow an emotion.
Yeah.
And when you follow an emotion, it may not always lead you in the best direction. So I think Jerry's message there was so on point.
It really is. And, it struck a chord for me. And I think it strikes a chord for a lot of folks too, just kind of given where we are in the world, and recognizing the fact that we are all carrying something.
Yeah.
And that's part of what church is supposed to be. It's part of why we decided to do this, was because we want to be there for people and let folks know that you're not riding solo on this journey, although it may feel like it. That's what God intended church to be, was to be a place where you can have trust and comfort and confidence in the people that you're talking to, that are going to be able to lead you, or support you, or whatever it may be, just to lift the burden or to be an ear. And what you said there about the flesh is movable. That is so true. And I'm experiencing it as Morgan and I prep to make this shift to Pennsylvania. And I was talking to you before we got on here, it's a temporary shift, but like, I'm looking around and I'm like, my life is in shambles. Like, there's stuff everywhere. And we're trying to cross off our to-do list, and you work that the checklist, yet your flesh is like, this isn't going to work, and that's not going to work. And then you get pissed off, and then you're like, then you get angry, and then you get scared, and you get worried. And it's like, it becomes that negative spiral that you feel like you can't get out of if you keep carrying it all to yourself. So, what Morgan and I have been doing is, in those points of just saying, this is how I'm feeling, and share with somebody, right? So that's what we're talking about here today, is being comfortable sharing. It makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's really where you get to start to see movement or progress, is when you open up and lean into somebody, or to a church, or to a community, because we all are carrying something.
It is. And one of the notes you have here is, isolation increases the weight of what you're carrying. You know, there's something in sales and marketing. I know you know this, but it's the bandwagon effect. People want to follow what everybody else is following, and nobody wants to go to hell alone. Is it what I've heard?
Exactly.
And so if you're going through something, is it terrible that somebody else is going through it too, and it makes you feel better? Probably. I mean, hey, you're going through hell too. Oh, I feel better now. That doesn't make any sense. But the reality is, because you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're going through something too, and you're surviving. God's got you. Oh, wow.
Yes.
And sometimes it's that voice that can give a word of wisdom, a word of comfort, and sometimes it's just there with you.
Yeah.
I know. I worked in the past a lot with people that were in AA or NA. I was never an addict myself, but I worked in that group years ago when I first moved to Wilmington. In ministry, and sometimes just having that person beside you says, hey, I'm an addict, I'm this, and maybe you're not an addict, but you person beside you that says, you know what, I fear this also, or
Yes.
I'm struggling with this also. Isolation is where the enemy wants you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the predator that looks for they don't attack the whole herd.
Yeah.
They want one to get away, and they go, aha, now I can take that one. And that's what the enemy does. He wants us to isolate so he can keep bombarding us with fear and lies and mistruth. But when we get back to, wait a minute, I'm going to call him my brother. I need some help here.
Yes.
Me and David were joking about this last night, and David said, hey, I'll be the first to call one-on-one. And I'll call you. It's just like having that person or people or church. We call to God, and we should always call to God, and he should be first. But if isolation increases the weight of what you're carrying, then connection will loosen the weight. It will lighten the load and give you some help.
And it's funny that you talk about that, because I just this past weekend, I was sharing with you before, my best friend got married. I was the best man, and you go through those things. But to your point of having, one of the things that I said was, he's been my best friend, my confidant, and my partner that I can trust for the last 20 years. And I think that is so important, to find someone like that is centered on God. And it's funny, because I've even talked about how our conversation shifted from causing chaos to how God's moving in our lives. And I think it's so beautiful when you have someone, to your point, because when you're isolated like that, it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And then it gets to a point where you make a decision that will impact your life. And you can avoid that by opening up. And I know that it's difficult. And I'm also not here to go and say, hey, go get a group and gossip, because that's not what we're talking about either. We're talking about being able to confidently share with folks that are God-centered and giving each other feedback, direction. How are you experiencing it? And that's where you start to uncover similarities. And then that weight, to your point, starts to lift off you. I'm not carrying this burden alone. And it's such a beautiful thing. And once you can do that, that's where you create a culture that you can move with.
And it's so important too that there's people that, and maybe you're watching, if you're watching this and you go to Seaside, you have a great church. We're blessed. But there's some maybe watching this and maybe you're not at Seaside. Maybe you're not at a church. Well, maybe you're sporadic. The key is you have to find that place and be committed to it if you're going to build those relationships. I've had people say, Wayne, I wish I had someone. This is when I'm doing counseling. I wish I had someone like you that I could talk to outside of, locally. And I'm like, well, are you involved with a church? And it's almost in fact, I've got to the point, Eli, if I'm doing counseling by phone or Zoom, I can almost tell. And I'll even ask, hey, are you involved in a local church? And I can almost tell you they're not, because they don't have that connection. And there is no perfect church. We'll go ahead and cover that up front. Because the church is really the people, and we're not perfect this side of heaven. We're growing.
That's good.
But finding a church that you can be committed to, and Jerry talked about that, just being committed. And that's how you build these relationships. that's how you build these people that you can go, hey, Eli, I'm struggling here, dude. What do you got? And what Jerry really talked about was, are you basing it on the preference of the music or this or this or this or purpose? Now, I won't mention his name. There's another pastor here locally in Wilmington. And he said, well, Wayne, we know we're not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you don't like the rock and roll church, we're not for you. That's okay, because we'll tell you this church is this, we'll share all these other churches. But it shouldn't be on preference. It should be on, is it really a place that you can serve and you can give and you can feed and be fed spiritually. And I think one of the notes you had there, growth happens when you invest, not just attend. And so those who are watching this, and maybe you've attended Seaside for quite a while, there's somewhere we can use you at.
Absolutely.
There's somewhere you can serve. You can get on here and do this podcast. That'll help.
100%. There's always.
I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. If somebody wants to do one of these,
please,
let us know. We'd love to have you on there. Share your message. Share your testimony.
Come on. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love where you went with that. It's, it happens when you invest, because that's the transition moment that I think a lot of folks, and look, I'm not saying that there's not a reason behind it, but that's where folks, I think they get to the point where, look, I just attend church, but they're at that point of, are you going to step in and invest your time? I'm not saying, if go over and you got to give a huge donation to church. No, invest your resources, your time, your skills.
Yes.
What God has blessed you with, turn around and give it back. And I know it's difficult, but I will tell you, and I was so scared when I was, nominated to become a deacon and get involved, because I felt I didn't know where I was at. Was I going to do it right? But you just have to trust and you lean in. And man, when I did that, the investment piece, the connection that was started to create, not that there wasn't a connection previous to that or prior to it, but it took on its own life. And you start to feel like it is family, your church family. And then when you have that connection where it's almost a familial connection, you're much more apt and willing to say, hey, Wayne, I got a problem.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're always kind of at arm's length.
Yeah. And that goes back to it. And I think this is so important. We're all committed at different degrees, at different levels. Jerry talks a lot about levels and seasons. Maybe it's your season to be committed, or where are you at in the season? Well, what level? And what I mean by that is not necessarily, hey, I do this or I do this in the church, but how committed is it? Is there more? I'm not just saying is there more you can do, but is there an area that you can serve someone and be served at the same time? And I think that's what's so important. Even doing this podcast, and I think this is what a lot of people miss, doing this podcast, preparing a sermon, whatever, you officiated weddings, preparing for that, you learn and you grow so much in the process of preparation. So it's not just that you're given, I prepare a sermon or I prepare a Wednesday night, Bible study. I'm also learning in this process.
Yes.
I'm like, whoa, I didn't see this. Well, I'm digging. God, what do you mean by this? What's up with this? And so I think some of you to go, I'm not getting any closer to God, or I don't feel like, I'm really growing. Well, then start helping. If it's not, hey, feel free. Wednesday night Bible studies. So, jump in there too. Find somebody and say, hey, can I pour into you?
Yes.
Can we share with one another? And I think I joke about this, but it's amazing what a cup of coffee. I mean, sitting down with a cup of coffee for 30 minutes at Port City or Drift or the Vault or wherever, just sit down with somebody for 30 minutes and go, what's going on? What's important to you?
Yeah.
What's important to you? And just listen and say, Holy Spirit, let me hear beyond the words. Let me hear. And then let them know what's important to you. My goodness, what it would change. I've seen it so many times.
And I love too where you went that not everybody is in the same spiritual maturity, because I think one of the things that it took a while for me to really grab a hold of it, but was to find a mentor in the church. And I'm not saying that, you know, you got to overcommit yourself to something, or, you know, push yourself beyond what you feel comfortable doing, but find it, at least start by finding a mentor where you're saying, look, I want to be where Wayne's at in the church, and his spirit and his understanding and his connection and his relationship with the Lord, and just talk to them. You know, it doesn't need to be, I need to do 1, 2, 3. No, just create a relationship, find someone, go have a cup of coffee, talk to them, because through those conversations, you will learn. You will learn how to have a deeper relationship. You will have aha moments. To your point, when we do this, there's so many times where I'm prepping for these things and I'm like, holy smokes, 35 years. And now it pops up. And it's like, it's been right there, but I've just like, and I love that about this, because it's the beautiful part about the word is you're always going to be learning. Whatever stage of life that you are, from a newborn till you're 125 years old, you can still learn and you can still give back. And that's the beautiful part about it, is the word also impacts you where you are. So you have different seasons of life, different growth and maturities, peaks and valleys. And the word that might have said something to you 10 years ago might be the same exact word, but mean something completely different now in the situation that you are. How good is that? Come on. Like that I get fired up about that stuff. And it's funny because it's just like, well, it's the Bible. I've had so many people say that it's the Bible. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're not really reading it. You're just skimming it.
Yeah. And I tell you, you know, for me, it's like you said, you can read this now and it means one thing, and read it later, it means something else. I was in 2 Corinthians 3:18. When I say for years, it's not that I didn't read other verses, but it's like everything was like, oh, that reminds me of this. I kept going back to the glory to glory transformation.
Yes.
And I realized it's a process, not a crisis. And this goes kind of back to the message of Jerry today, Sunday, was like steadfast.
Yes.
When you feel like you're on shaky ground, when you feel like, as we've talked about a few weeks before, oops, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have thought that. I shouldn't have done that. And you fell into sin. You know what? I'm going to stay immovable in my spirit. Even if the flesh moved, I'm going to stay immovable. I'm going to stay grounded, because, as we'll go back to 2 Corinthians, it is a glory to glory process. Lord, thank you that I'm growing. I'm maturing. I am being transformed by the Holy Spirit every single day. Thank you for that. And that goes back to also being willing to hold out the withered hand instead of the good hand, saying, hey, Lord, I thank you, but I still got a problem here. I got to share this. I don't know who knows who Theo Vaughn is.
Yeah.
You know, have you seen his clip? You know, this may be, you know, he made a clip and somebody just called in and said, hey, I'm trying to be better. And man, Theo breaks down. He said, I want God to heal like the deep levels and then another level deeper. You know, I'm not going to try to go back and say what he said, but it was probably the most honest. I mean, I almost cried for the dude, and I was like, Lord, bless him, give him that. And sometimes it's just like, Lord, I want you to heal the areas that, as he said, I don't even want to give up. He said, there's areas in my life I know I need to give up, but I don't want to. Go there, Lord. Go there and help me. Such raw truth and raw emotion that I was like, man, if the church would cry out the way this guy cried out. You know, Lord, I want to, here's my withered hand. You know, and I do respect that about our church. I can go to so many, I'm not going to name them here, but Pastor Jerry and so many others and say, hey, this hand's kind of withered right now. I need some help. Yeah. And I know I'm not going to be judged or ridiculed. I'm going to be supported and helped. And that's what I want people to know. That's what Seaside, I mean, if you're watching this, I really feel like somebody's watching this today that has not attended. I'm just telling you what I'm feeling in my heart. And I want you to know, we don't care how edgy, dark, dirty. We don't care. No. Show up and let us just be there with you. We'll show you some of our dirt. you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then we'll show you who has cleansed us. So, yeah, show us your withered hand. We'll show you the hand that can heal it.
I love that. I love that. And it's one of the last points on here, but vulnerability creates space for God and for others to step in. And I really think a lot of people are doing their best right now to sort of hold things together on the outside, while frankly they're carrying something heavy on the inside, and that's more common than we like to admit. There's the facade of social media and the world that's out there, but it's honestly, we have things we carry, and healing comes from a moment of honesty. And it's a moment when someone's willing to bring what's broken into the open. And that frankly takes courage, and also takes trust that you're in a place where people will walk with you and not turn away from you. And that's the church that we are trying to be, and that we are at Seaside. It's a place where people don't feel pressured to have it all together, to your point, Wayne, but instead feel supported when they don't. So as you head into this week, ask yourself, where do I need to stop carrying this alone? Who can I talk to? Where can I be honest? What am I holding back I don't need to anymore? You don't have to solve everything in one step. Let me say that up front. It's a journey, but taking that first step toward honesty can change more than you expect. So, we appreciate you joining in. As always, we'd love to see you tonight. I almost said tomorrow, but it's Wednesday. So tonight is community dinner at 6, Bible study following that at 7. Again, it's one of the best ways to stay connected, like we're talking about here, and actually walk this out with other people. And as always, if this episode stuck with you, if it struck a chord, share it with someone. If you want to join in the podcast, if you have something that you want to share, a testimony, please let us know. Reach out to us. And by sharing this, you never know who might be carrying something quietly that you can help open up. So we love you guys. We appreciate you joining in. Hit that subscribe button. Go out and share the episode. And we will catch you on the next Overflow podcast. Have a blessed Wednesday, everybody. Take care.